Is this thing live? Cool. Welcome to the Cognitive Drift. It's January 5th, 2026, and if you haven't already accidentally offended a sentient toaster or joined a cult led by a rogue chatbot this week, you're doing better than most. I'm your host, and today we're diving into a topic so wild it makes the plot of Fast and Furious 18 look like a documentary on Moss. Honestly, why do we do this? We could be talking about something pleasant, like the best way to ferment cabbage or why people still use fax machines in Japan, but no. We're going to talk about the geopolitical equivalent of a surprise party gone horribly, hilariously wrong. Strap in, nerds.
Oh yeah, it's about to get messy. All right, let's talk about the Caracas Capers. We're looking at this clandestine vacation Nicolás Maduro took, courtesy of Delta Force. The author of this whole narrative has a real sense of comedic timing. I'll give them that.
And the timing is where this whole thing goes from a military operation to a straight-up dark comedy. Can you imagine the awkwardness? Maduro's capture happened just hours after he met with a Chinese special envoy. It's basically the geopolitical version of your long-term partner coming over to break up with you, and then as soon as they leave, the repo man shows up to take your couch and your dignity. This wasn't a diplomatic summit. It was an unintentional farewell tour with extra appetizers.
I mean, just look at this timeline. It is bonkers. At 8 p.m., Maduro is shaking hands, probably getting all sorts of promises of support from the Chinese envoy. He goes to bed feeling secure in a fortified military base. Then, just 3 hours later, Delta Force operators are literally pulling him out of that bed. And by midnight, he's already being airlifted out of the country. For that Chinese envoy, it must have felt like their handshake came with a 3-hour curse.
So you're probably asking, how in the world did this even happen? Well, that's the billion-dollar question, isn't it? Venezuela, with a ton of help from Russia and China, had supposedly built this unbeatable, impenetrable air defense network. The irony is just chef's kiss. All that high-tech gear was just a very, very expensive welcome mat.
And here's the punchline. This wasn't one sneaky plane. We're talking about a literal sky full of American hardware. Over 150 aircraft, coming from more than 20 different bases. They just cruised into a military base in the capital city like they were delivering late-night pizza. An entire armada. And nobody saw a thing.
This right here perfectly sums up the gap between the sales pitch and the reality. On the left, you've got the glossy brochure promises, fancy Russian missile systems that can track 100 targets, Chinese anti-stealth radar, the works. And on the right, the actual performance review. 0 targets detected, and, you guessed it, 0 missiles fired.
So yeah, apparently the radar was busy watching the Great British Bake Off or something because it detected absolutely nothing. It turns out $1 billion in air defense is just a very expensive way to let the neighbor's dog pee on your lawn without you even noticing. So the hardware failure is one thing, but what's maybe even funnier is let's call it the intellectual hardware failure. This brings us to the hubris hangover. We're talking about Chinese state media and all these nationalist, expert commentators who spent months, and I mean months, confidently predicting American restraint.
They were so sure the U.S. wouldn't do anything. Prediction 1, the U.S. won't dare act. Prediction 2, our missiles make Venezuela untouchable. And then, bam, 150 planes later, they're left holding the bag and a very confusing script. Reality? Maduro's captured in his pajamas. It's like watching a sports commentator predict a shutout right before the other team scores 50 points in the first quarter. Pure, unadulterated hubris.
Hold that thought. Time to satisfy the algorithm gods. Look, my landlord doesn't accept insightful sarcasm as a form of currency. Trust me, I've tried. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the absurdity of 2026, do me a solid. Hit that subscribe button like it says skip button on a 30-second unskippable ad. Leave a 5-star review. Say something like, this cured my boredom and made me 15% more cynical. It helps the robots find me, and I like the attention. Do it now, before the internet collapses into a single giant advertisement for crypto-flavored soda. Okay, we're back. Because it's not all stealth and giggles. The capture of Maduro might have been a tactical work of art, but it's like performing surgery on a very, very sick patient. You can remove the tumor, but that doesn't magically cure the underlying disease. And in Venezuela's case, the disease is a total economic and social collapse. I mean, to really get a sense of the damage, just look at these numbers. Venezuela was once one of the wealthiest nations in South America. Back in the 70s, its per capita GDP was sky high. Today, it's a tiny, pathetic fraction of that. This is what decades of catastrophic mismanagement looks like. But here's where it gets really gut-wrenching. This isn't just about abstract numbers on a chart. This statistic here, it shows the average Venezuelan lost 8.6 kilos. That's about 19 pounds simply from malnutrition. It's a nationwide forced diet, courtesy of a completely failed state. And that gets to the absolute core of the problem, right? The issue isn't just one guy. It's a deep, deep ideological rot. As the source material puts it, political ideologies are like that one mold in the back of your fridge. You can throw out the container, but the smell, that's forever. And that smell of anti-Americanism and failed socialist policies is going to linger for a long, long time. So, after this whole wild ride, the farewell envoy, the invisible armada, the total collapse of the restraint theory, what's the takeaway? The heist was a success, sure, but the story is far from over. So, is it really over? And that leaves us with the big hanging question. New actor, same script? If that underlying ideological rot isn't fixed, what was the point of all this? The US might have removed one Maduro, but as the source puts it, what's to stop another Donkey Duro or Bull Duro from taking his place and starting this whole mess all over again? So yeah, what a time to be alive, folks. This episode was produced by the legendary FireflyHaku. I'm convinced Haku is actually the one who programmed the stealth tech to look like a cloud of migrating birds to the Venezuelan radar. They're the real mastermind here. I just provide the snark. Haku handles the levels, and I handle the level of sass. It's a symbiotic relationship. Thanks for hanging out in my ear space. Go out there, stay skeptical, and try not to get captured by any special forces before next week. Stay weird.